Okay, now we start step 3 of the assembly process for the Halloween Skulls 3-axis skull. For this assembly, for this part of the assembly, you're going to need some things. First of all, you're going to need the LED for the eyes, and they come in a little plastic packaging, looks like this. You can see it. There's only 2 of them left in there. You see the dark 2 sections at the end. And I have one down here on my microscope. So those are the LEDs. They're very small. They're about 3.2 millimeters square. So you're going to need some pretty good eyesight to see where you're going to solder these on. There's a couple of solutions for that. But let's get through what you need. You're going to need those LEDs. You're going to need a soldering iron. You're going to need some solder. You're going to need some wire. This is 32 gauge wire, and I have 4 colors of this wire. These are common anode LEDs, and the anode is the positive lead, so I make that white. That's for the anode. And then you have a red, green, and blue. So we have red, green, and they don't sell blue wire in the size that I want, so I'm using black. Hopefully no one will confuse that with a ground wire. They did not have blue in this wire. This is 32 gauge wire, so it's very thin, and that is certainly because of the size of the contacts that you have to solder to over here. Here's a couple of close-up pictures of what this looks like. What this big square is down here is a piece of 2-sided tape, and that allows me to stick the LED with the LED side facing down to that, and that holds it in place for me. And you can do that anywhere you want. And then I look through this microscope so that I can see the different tabs and the wire and make sure it's all aligned and not shorting out. Because it's not impossible to see with the naked eye. You can see them, but once you start to get the soldering iron in the way and your hands, it becomes very difficult to do the work. So the first thing that you're going to have to do is cut some lengths of this wire. So I got a ruler set up here, and I'm going to make them all just about 8 inches long, which is probably more than you need, but it's better to have that than not enough. So I am going to set these up at 8 and 8. So I've got the red, the blue. So here's my 4 cuts of wire. And you're going to want to strip a very, very tiny bit off of the end. Very, very tiny. So your contact is very small. So you can barely, I'm not even going to bother holding it up there, you'll never see it in the camera. But it's just a fraction, a couple millimeters in length at the end of exposed wire. And then I'm going to tin those wires because they work better that way. And it comes right on those, sticks right to that wire really nice. Okay. Now I've got them all tinned, and I'm going to snip off all but a couple of millimeters on the end. You're going to need a bright light that you can aim at this to help you be able to see the small space, small things. I'm using just a little LED flashlight that you can pick up anywhere. So you're soldering from the bottom side of the LED. And there's a little diagram here that will tell you which wires go where. If I get the camera to focus on it, and there you go. The anode is the white, and the red, green, and blue is red, green, and black wires. Right over here is this little black box that sticks out from that line in the middle. That is a marking on the bottom of the actual LED which marks which one is the anode. So it points towards the anode. So here's a close-up of what it looks like sitting on my microscope, and you can see that green line there. Now, if you don't have a microscope handy and you can't see it very well, you can still do this. And I've taken a Kleenex box, and I cut out the plastic, and I made a cut in it here. Put a little piece of 2-sided tape on the inside, right in there if you can see it. I took a smartphone and laid it right on the top, and I still had a light aimed down inside here, and you can come in from any angle there. And the smartphone, I put it right there. I put it on video so it wouldn't automatically shut off after a period of time. and I was able to zoom in on the smartphone almost to the level that I could see through the microscope. So it was quite easy to see. So before I actually connect the wires, one other thing that I want to do is get the spots on the LED tinned, and that makes it a lot easier to connect the wires once they're done. So I'm going to take my soldering iron and my solder and look through the microscope here and see where I'm going to place this stuff and get it all aligned. Wait till I get into the picture here with the solder. There's a solder. Solder is as thin solder is as big as the connector, and then I just need to go down there and just touch that with a quick touch. Then that's soldered. That puts solder on one of the connectors already. So now we want to touch these up, and we want to make sure that the wire doesn't stick out past the contact very much, or at all if you can avoid it. Gonna get the right side here. Okay, so there's my first one, and I'm going to reach in there with the soldering iron. Okay, first one is soldered on. And then the one below that is the red one. That's the one below the anode. Okay, that one's stuck on. Then the blue, which is actually our black wire, and the green wire is the last one. Stick that down on the bottom. So now we have all our wires soldered to this thing. And just looking at it under the microscope for a second. And what I really want to make sure is that nothing is shorting against anything else. This is not the neatest of soldering jobs, but it looks solid and nothing is shorting out. Okay, so that looks, you'll never see this, but okay, there you go. Now, you're going to do two of these, of course, one for the left eye, one for the right eye. And then you're going to take these eyepieces that came with your kit. So we have these, and we're going to feed the wire through from the top. You're going to put all your wires together. This is why you have to have such thin wire. Well, one reason is because the contacts are just that small, but the other reason is because this is a very small opening. There we go. All the wires are in. And now we just take that and pull it through so that the LED is sitting right at the top. And right now you'll see that it's now we want it to stay there, of course, and so to get that to happen we break out the krazy glue. So there's our super glue, and basically we're just going to touch it just a little bit on the bottom side. Just a little touch where we have it up like this. We're going to paint right around the base there and slide it right down into it. And if you can just touch it along the sides. And then we're going to let that dry off to the side. What you have to make sure is when it's glued in there that the LED part does not extend out past the edges of the plastic, because that whole thing, I'm not going to stick it on there right now because the glue's still wet, but that whole thing has to fit into that hole in the eyeball, and it will fit as long as your LED is centered and not sticking out past the edges. Alright, so that's one done. Now the other side is just going to be bare wires, so we're going to strip away a little bit on that side. I would recommend tinning those wires as well, because they're just going to go into a screw down contact on the controller board that we'll see in another step. So that is how you do the eyes, and as I said, if you don't have a microscope, which isn't really a household item, you can use the Kleenex box method and I found that that works quite well. If you are using the Kleenex box method, you're in a little bit of an enclosed space, and it is cardboard, so be careful that you don't lay your soldering iron on the cardboard, and also that you don't lift it up and melt the face of your iPhone. You probably wouldn't want to do that. So just be aware of those conditions, and that should work out fine for you. That concludes step 3 of the Halloween Skulls 3-axis skull assembly video series.